Welcome to the Friday experiment, our third question of the day. It is Friday, July 26, 2019. We've looked at two questions so far. What are the greatest challenges facing humanity today from your perspective? Secondly, do you have a vision for how things can work better collectively, or specific interventions, ideas, or projects that you think can affect important change? And then this question, which is, how do you see yourself contributing or participating with this project? And with that, I open the floor.
Yes, I can talk. I don't see GCC more as a project, or it's a project in itself, but just being at Zoom meetings, that's all. I mean, this conversation, this listening and contributing, and afterwards to make contact and then to see if I contribute to personal efforts in terms of global challenges. That's all.
Thank you, Ties.
Okay, I see, I don't know if we're talking GCC or what we're talking about here, but I see at least this as so far a conversation space, and that's what's been going on continuously in at different days, different constellations of people. Some of them have been coming back regularly, sometimes others. So the participation in some of them, that's definitely a contribution, which is specific. I like that. It's always nourishing, and even though it's not necessarily so easy to measure exactly what's happened, but there's definitely a value. I see it in just being part of whatever comes up, really. And then there's of course wishes for moving the conversations in a certain direction, and certain ideas that I have and others have expressed, and I think I could be wanting to contribute there as well. I mean, I like a lot some of the playful stuff, like the singing and stuff. That's of interest for me. It's also of interest for me to have more dialogues where we really question deeply and try to answer succinctly, sort of like a philosophical exploration where we try to arrive at a greater understanding collectively. That's of interest for me. The deep dives, in the sense of focusing on one person at a time, or one idea at a time, and to try to do it in a way which leads to a greater understanding of that person for themselves and for others. So hopefully it's a better understanding of that person than anyone had before. So that there's a growth that happens. And you see that sometimes in really great podcasts, interviews, that it's really like that person actually evolves somehow in their understanding through that process. So all of those sort of conversations are really, really interesting for me. And I also see it in view of a larger project over time, which has to do with profiles of specific individuals, and that if there's a process where the conversations can feed high quality data, I would put it, high quality data for me, is data that's associated with values and with something that's really relevant to the passion of the person. So I'm interested in learning about what people really are passionate about and what they really care about and what they're, you know, what's really big for them. And if we can have conversations that can generate a better understanding of this, then that's obviously data to go straight into the profile of the person. And when I'm saying a profile, in my mind, there's the name of the person, and then there's associated information. We could at some point in the future imagine a database, like one database of all people in the world. Or it could be many databases, probably. But so that's sort of the manifestation of the profiling at some point. I mean, we can talk about that. But now I'm more talking about the content itself of the profiles, and that's generated through these conversations. And because it's not just trivial information that's interesting, it's really, if we can get to know people in the right way, to get to know them as they are to some extent, yeah, kind of close to reality, but also as they want to be. So it's something alive there, right? It's a process. It's appreciative inquiry, basically. It's much upon those principles. So I could say that too. I'm interested in appreciative inquiry and in using the appreciative approach when trying to understand people better and understand their ideas better, and can also be other more abstract ideas as well. So yeah, I'm interested in many things, but I just gotta say, for me, I'm a kind of person who moves slowly. So, you know, I'm having a long-term perspective on all this. I just have to have it because the scope of my interests are so huge. So there's no other way than to just see this as a long-term thing. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that for now.
I'll jump in to that juicy silence. Yeah, for me, what I want to contribute is this, you know, being a part of the living experiment, testing things, kicking the tires, inviting people to into experimenting with how and the practice of self-created media, group-created media. In this, I have many questions. I love that Stacy stepped into this today in saying, "Hey, not sure I really want. I want to choose who this particular piece goes to." And I think that thoughtful dissemination in right timing is a powerful tool we can also use, think into. I think that one of the most effective contributions or ways that I have contributed that's been most helpful is to be really curious about people and to give people the space and time to be able to share their thing. And so I'd like to do more of that and more of that one-on-one. Initially, my hope was that everyone would see how important it was to have to do the same thing that I'm doing in terms of one-on-one conversations and deep dives with people. That's kind of where I started in this space, and convening group conversations. But it's every process, I think, takes a little longer than expected. Um, and I think importantly as well, I can only be an example of what I think, take the feedback from people, see how other people see what I'm doing and how they're motivated from their own sovereign space as an individual, to be able to say, okay, yeah, I liked what she did there and I'd like to do it this way. So I see a lot of potential and possibility for others to step in with their ways that they might host a deep dive conversation like Doug has and Heiner has and Glenn has and Sam has, and just seeing, well, you know, how can we learn together how to practice the art of communication in a way that serves building a greater understanding of our individuality and our interconnectedness. So I'm still doing that, and I think it's useful and helpful, and I'm deeply nourished by the people that I've been able to meet, and you all inspire me. So I feel also like a big part of this is about belonging and being a part of a community that supports each other in ways of being held and cared about, and I think that that's a really important part of this work as well, embracing our humanity and loving each other. And with that, I open the floor.
I'll check out. I just want to say that the way this opened, I thought this was, I didn't think it was being taped. So the last part of me singing with the more, I thought we were in the back, but that's okay. I just want to say that this was very nourishing for me. I learned, I had fun, and that's always been my goal. Learn, fun, help. I feel like I helped. So, you know, I kind of get a little bit poked when I hear T say that, you know, for him this is just a Zoom, because for me this is so much more than just a Zoom. So much more. You people feel like family to me. And I take that very seriously. And I know firsthand how I feel and how you've cared for me. Actually, everyone except for the one person that's just listening in, every person in this room that I can visually see has showed me in some way how much they care for me. And I love them all back. So thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. And just, this is the third question. How do you see yourself contributing or participating with the project, as well as a checkout, because we're coming up for time?
I think my way is obvious, so I'm not going to answer that. I hope it's obvious by now. My goodness.
Well, since I'm new here, I'm exploring and learning as I go, and we'll figure it out as I go. So thank you all for being here.
I don't know. I admit I have been of some use in this group. I admit I've probably caused some changes, and to myself. I'm at a crossroads now, and I need to reflect probably very deeply. Probably will stay with the group. And I'm very keen on the idea of us exploring other groups as well. Yeah. Thank you, Stacy. You've been very warm toward me and everybody else as well. So I will update myself in due course. I'm complete.
Doug, I think you're up.
Yeah, so I guess for me, contribution is showing up. It's time and attention, but time and attention at 100%. And modeling that. I really, from a contribution standpoint, I think that's about it. And ditto to all of the, pieces, gifts that were shared in terms of, this is a tribe for me. So there's sort of an element of family to that, but there's more. And there's care and concern and connection and curiosity and all of that. And all of those words start with C. So, we'll have to plug the alphabet code into that, figure out what that's about. Not to let that moment pass.
Sorry, literally see means to see,
yeah.
to perceive.
Yeah. So, yeah, and at least what happened for me today, unique, distinct, and different than any time before leading up to today, was sort of a whole nother level of presence, listening, receiving, processing. The experience was sort of like a flow, but a cumulative flow. So it was like new in the moment, but with all of the stuff that preceded it. And seeing the cross connections, cross overlaps in meaning and intention that made all of the contributions of everybody part of one awareness understanding rather than discrete, individual, linear. And been sort of working toward that for a while, like imagined that, wondered whether that was possible, but actually got a taste of that, experienced that today. A little bit overwhelming, made me want much more space and breathing room between contributions to allow what had been provided to really settle in fully before the next installment, the next layer. So, but that's also, I also have this like awareness that that's for me, I could also see that being like hugely torturous and painful for a lot of people that aren't experiencing it that way. So they don't need the space and time, and how do you bridge that? Like, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the conflict in that and the juggle in that? So that was something I was experiencing in real time. There was sort of like this meta thing of slow down, shit, I need more space, I need more, and there was a thought that had a sort of, that crystallized, went away, and had to come back 2 or 3 times before my turn came to express within a synthesized frame what had connected the dots on. So it's like really affording an experiential opportunity frame, an experience that I think is very, very powerful, and is sort of conversation plus state of being, at least for me. And yeah, for that, I'm like hugely grateful to everybody here, because you guys co-created the flow and the container for me to experience that. And that's terrific. Thank you, thank you. And with that, I'm complete.
Can I ask Doug a question? Doug? So, because I'm with you on that, and I'm confused now. I forgot, I already lost my train of thought. Oh, I know what I want. So how did it feel? Because I know it. I feel the same way about presence. I know in my personal life, if I'm talking to somebody, they're checking their texts or they're doing something that's disturbing to me, which is part of what I'm trying to work on. So my question to you is, how did it affect you, if any, and any thoughts around that you might want to share when you saw that I was drawing as you were speaking, or as somebody else might have been speaking? How did that affect you? You're muted.
I don't, I think I was doing chaotic recording in terms of the transcription stuff in the chat. And I was really doing that just in service to heightening intention on the speaker.
So it didn't bother you at all?
So it was really, if you weren't speaking, it was outside of my field. Because there was, visually, I've got to focus on the speaker to do that. And I'm not going to see anything else or anybody else or anything else that's going on, or register. So it certainly didn't register for me.
Well, that's great, because that's really my intention, and I know this is what Eric, is really passionate about, is finding learning environments that work for everybody.
Thank you both. And I'd love to continue the round you initiated, Doug, in feedback on this particular session. Any insights that anybody might have had, and any thoughts. And Stacy, what I appreciated about your question was, I'm curious if the level of collective attention was such that there was a tipping point in terms of the field, as it were, for you, Doug, in terms of what you shared that you experienced in this session for the first time. That's interesting. I sometimes do go from, I might have to have a look on Facebook. I know I got a couple of pings while I was online here from my family, and I didn't choose to look at them. Sometimes I do. And I'm curious if the collective level of focus of us today was such that, people were really engaged and generating a field that allowed more interconnection and more information to be, to go through each person. So I'm curious if there's any other feedback on today's experiment, ideas for a next experiment, or otherwise feedback to close our session. Stacy.
Yeah, I just want to say, number one, that I was 100% present whether, no matter what it looked like I was doing, I was absolutely 100% present, even when I was doing my answering and whatever. And the other thing is, Doug brought it up, and I'm glad he reminded me. This goes to what you asked me earlier about, or a couple of people wanted to know, well, why separate recordings? Why for some people and not for others? Because not everybody wants to do this or be forced to do this. So that is the main reason to have these things cut up. People know what they're coming to do. They know when they want to taste a little bit. That's why I did some of it. So there's nothing that goes into anything I do that I haven't spent probably 50 years thinking about. It's just only in the last 3 that it's coming together. And I'm complete and grateful and the whole bit.
Thank you so much. Other thoughts on the wrap up of our session? How'd the experiment go?
I mean, I was happy. I've been a little more tired today than usual, but I mean, I'm still not doing all kinds of other stuff. I'm drawing a little bit, but that's sort of almost notes. So, I mean, generally, my experience is that when we do show up with some degree of presence, then it's something great that happens every time, and it works. So I believe in it. And thank you all for today.
Any other final thoughts before we wrap today? With that, I thank everyone so much for coming together to do this session, and welcome especially to Srinivas and Eric. We haven't seen you much. It's really nice to invite you to be a part of our group experience. So thank you so much, everyone, and until next time. Glenn will coordinate for our recordings.